So the positive news about the development of some kind of COVID-19 vaccine or vaccines has buoyed hopes of a return next year to quarantine-free international travel. And as I mentioned, Qantas Chief Executive Alan Joyce has said this week that he's in talks with other airlines about the possibility of a so-called vaccination passport for overseas travellers.
We are looking at changing our terms and conditions to say for international travellers that we will ask people to have a vaccination before they can get on the aircraft. Whether you need that domestically, we'll have to see what happens with COVID-19 in the market, but certainly for international visitors coming out and people leaving the country, we think that's a necessity.
That's Qantas CEO Alan Joyce. There is already a new digital health passport. It's been piloted by a small number of passengers flying between the UK and the US. Paul Meyer is the Chief Executive of the Commons project, which has created a digital health pass. He joins us now from New York. Paul Meyer, welcome to RM Breakfast.
Great to be here.
Paul, how does the digital health pass work? What does it contain? What information?
Well, CommonPass is a platform that allows travelers to collect their health information, right now lab results, but soon vaccination records, and demonstrate that they actually satisfy whatever requirements that an airline or a destination country imposes. But importantly, do it in a way that protects the privacy of the individual traveler.
Okay, so you've been trialling it last month. You tested on passengers on a United Airlines flight from London to Newark and on a Cathay Pacific flight from Hong Kong to Singapore. What were you trying to work out with that trial?
We were trying to demonstrate that we could demonstrate the end-to-end process from a lab test into the app to satisfy the requirements and then have that pass be inspected by the airline before departure and then by border agencies on arrival.
Okay.
And so we worked in collaboration with government partners on either end.
All right. So in practice, if we step through that, how does it work? A passenger who wants to travel, say to New York, has to go to their doctor and get a test. Is that right? And how do they sort of upload that test or make sure that that test result is transferred into their digital health pass?
Yeah. What they do is they're directed by the airline before they go to the airport. They're prompted to download CommonPass, and then they can see what the requirements are going to be for the flight and the destination, including what are the labs or healthcare facilities where they can go get tested or go get vaccinated. Mm-hmm. What they then do is they pull their records into CommonPass, and then they basically can generate a pass that the airline or the border agency can inspect to know that that person has satisfied the requirements, whether by getting tested or by getting vaccinated.
Okay, so that's a lot of sort of digital collaboration going on there and digital and technological setups. How close are we, or how long would that take to get that sort of system in place?
Well, it builds on work that we at the Commons Project Foundation have been doing for the last 2 years on a platform called Common Health. That is a platform for people to collect, store, and share their health information. Mm-hmm. This isn't an airline app. We didn't do this just for COVID. We've been working on empowering individuals to collect, store, and share their health information for health purposes. This is just a use case to apply that existing health platform and health interoperability technology to support airlines and travel and recovery in the COVID era.
And how many airlines are you talking to or are you aware of are interested in doing this? I mean, there's plenty of airlines, I know, the ones that are, well, there's not plenty flying, but the ones that are flying, some, for instance, you have to prove you've had a negative test within 24 hours before flying. So how many are talking to you about this notion?
Well, more importantly than airlines, we're talking and pretty deeply engaged with 40 governments around the world. 40 governments, yes. We've had conversations with 40 governments and pretty far down the path with many of those conversations. And more importantly, the governments are starting to talk to each other, because what we're really demonstrating is that governments can actually trust health information from another country. You can test people when they arrive. You can't vaccinate people when they arrive. So ultimately, for this model of testing and vaccination to work, we need a model that allows governments to trust other governments and health data that comes from other countries.
Okay.
And so we're working with about 40 governments. And then we're also, today we announced that Airport Council International, which is the umbrella association for the world's 2,000 airports, has joined the Common Trust Network, which we refer to as, and also that United Airlines, JetBlue, Virgin Atlantic, Lufthansa, and Swiss are going to be rolling out CommonPass beginning in December.
Okay, and that's based around testing. We've been talking testing. There's no vaccine yet, obviously, but Alan Joyce from Qantas is proposing proof of vaccination before you fly. Is that really what governments are looking for? Do you think that's going to be a standard rolled out?
Yeah, I mean, look, many countries right now are requiring testing, for where travel is allowed, requiring, for example, a negative PCR test 48 hours or 72 hours before departure. As vaccine starts to get distributed, I do think that will be a requirement for many countries. As the previous guest stated, yellow fever vaccination records are required for travel. So I do think that's coming. And I think it's very important as we think about the digital infrastructure to enable this. We don't just think about testing, we do think about vaccine. And there's a critical difference, which is people might go get tested at the airport to get on an airplane. No one's going to get vaccinated to get on an airplane. They're going to get vaccinated to get vaccinated. And so it's really important that the travel problem can't be solved as a travel app. Ultimately, it's got to leverage existing healthcare and connect to the healthcare system, because that's where vaccination records.
It's a vaccination app rather than a travel app.
It's a vaccination app. It's a vaccination app that can be used for travel, not a travel app that's trying to figure out how to tap into vaccination records.
And Paul, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but already, as we've heard pointed out this morning, there's yellow fever vaccination certificates that some countries require. But, a lot of people listening and saying, what about my rights? What if I don't want to get vaccination? Some people don't believe in vaccination. Is that just bad luck? They don't have a right to travel then if this becomes the pass?
It's a really big issue, and it's an important ethical issue, and it's a big public policy question, right? I actually don't know in Australia, but many school districts in the United States require kids to be vaccinated to go to school. So, going to school is a pretty important right, and it's governments and communities have made a decision that they want children to be vaccinated to go to school. So I think that's a good analogy to be thinking about. There are important public health considerations, and societies and governments and communities will make a decision about whether this should or shouldn't be required. But ultimately, that's going to be a political and community decision.
How far off do you think we are, Paul, from a health pass or a health passport or a vaccination passport, whatever we're going to call it?
Well, I mean, we're launching this. We completed the trials in October. We're launching in production across a number of countries in December, and now with testing. But we're also working with most of the main vaccine distributors to ensure that as vaccines are being administered, that those vaccine records get digitized and individuals have access to their digital vaccination records.
Okay. Paul Meyer, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Paul Meyer, Chief Executive of the Commons Project, which, as you heard, is creating and testing this digital health pass as part of a global framework for COVID-safe international air travel. 40 countries at the moment engaged in some kind of talks around devising this. Looks like once we get some vaccines, it may be the new normal.